The bitter wind howled across the Montana plains as Faith Langley staggered through knee-deep snow, her tears freezing on her cheeks before they could even fall. December 1887 was proving to be the cruelest of winters, matching the cruelty of her father who had just cast her out of the only home she'd ever known. "You've dishonored this family for the last time." Her father's words still rang in her ears as he had thrown her meager belongings into a sack and pushed her out the door. Her crime: refusing to marry Albert Holloway, the wealthy rancher who was 3 decades her senior but whose money her father coveted. Faith, barely 19, hugged herself as she trudged forward, her thin woolen coat providing little protection against the blizzard that had descended upon the territory with unforgiving fury. Her lungs burned with each breath, the frigid air stabbing like knives. She had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to find shelter before nightfall claimed her completely. The snow was falling so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. Her family's ranch was miles behind her now, and the nearest town was too far to reach on foot in this weather. As darkness began to settle across the landscape, panic clawed at her chest. She had heard stories of travelers frozen to death in Montana winters, their bodies found only after the spring thaw. Her legs, numb from cold and exertion, finally betrayed her. Faith collapsed into the snow, her strength depleted. As consciousness began to slip away, she thought she heard the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats, but surely that was just her mind playing tricks as death approached. "Hey there, miss," a deep voice called out seemingly from nowhere. "Miss, can you hear me?" Faith managed to lift her head slightly, her vision blurry as she made out the silhouette of a man on horseback. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the snow. "Good Lord, what are you doing out here in this storm?" he asked, crouching beside her. Through half-frozen eyelashes, she saw concern etched across a handsome, weather-worn face. He couldn't have been more than 25, with dark hair peeking out from under his cowboy hat. "Please," Faith whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Help me?" Without hesitation, the stranger removed his heavy duster coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "I've got you," he assured her, his voice steady and calm despite the raging storm. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to his horse. "Name's Adam Ellis," he said, mounting his horse with Faith securely in his arms. "And you're half frozen. My cabin's not far from here." Faith couldn't respond, her body trembling violently as the warmth of his chest began to thaw her frozen limbs, bringing with it an excruciating pain. She fought to stay conscious as Adam urged his horse forward through the blinding snow. True to his word, within 20 minutes a small log cabin emerged from the white landscape. Adam dismounted carefully, keeping Faith in his arms as he kicked open the door and carried her inside. The blessed heat from a still burning fire enveloped her immediately. "This is home now," Adam said simply, setting her gently on a chair near the fireplace. "At least until this storm passes and we figure out where you belong." The cabin was modest but neat, a testament to a man who lived alone but took pride in his surroundings. A single room served as kitchen, bedroom, and living area with a small table, a bed in the corner, and various supplies organized along the walls. Adam moved with purpose, stoking the fire before retrieving blankets from a chest. "We need to get you warm," he explained, wrapping the thick woolen blankets around her shoulders. "Can you tell me your name, miss?" "Faith," she managed through chattering teeth. "Faith Langley." "Well, Miss Langley, you're lucky I was heading back from checking my trap lines," Adam said, moving to a small stove where he put a pot of water to boil. "Another hour out there and you might not have made it." As warmth slowly returned to her body, Faith's mind cleared enough to realize the precariousness of her situation. She was alone in a cabin with a man she didn't know, miles from anywhere. But the alternative had been certain death, and something in Adam's straightforward manner and kind eyes told her she wasn't in danger from him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving my life." Adam waved away her thanks as he prepared a cup of hot coffee, adding a generous amount of sugar before handing it to her. Any decent person would have done the same. What I can't figure is why a young woman like yourself was out alone in a blizzard. The question brought reality crashing back. Faith's hands trembled around the warm cup as tears welled in her eyes. My father, he cast me out. I refused to marry the man he chose for me. Adam's expression darkened. Your own father put you out in this weather over refusing a marriage. Faith nodded, a tear escaping despite her best efforts. Albert Holloway owns the largest cattle ranch in the county. My father has been losing money for years, and he saw the marriage as his salvation. When I refused, he said I was dead to him. Holloway, Adam's jaw tightened. The man's nearly 50 if he's a day. 53, Faith confirmed quietly, and I'm 19. Adam shook his head in disgust. No father worthy of the name would force his daughter into such a situation, let alone cast her out to die. He moved to the stove again, ladling stew from a pot into a bowl. Here, eat something, then you should rest. Faith accepted the food gratefully, realizing suddenly how hungry she was. The stew was simple but hearty, filled with venison and root vegetables. As she ate, Adam busied himself making a pallet on the floor near the fire. You'll take the bed tonight, he said firmly when she protested. I'll sleep here by the fire. Tomorrow, when the storm breaks, we can figure out what to do. The storm, however, had other plans. By morning, the snow had piled so high it nearly reached the windowsills of the small cabin. Adam peered out at the white expanse and shook his head. We won't be going anywhere for a few days at least, he announced. Never seen a December storm like this one. Faith stood by the window, guilt washing over her. I've imposed on you enough already. Perhaps if the snow lessens, you could point me toward town. Adam gave her a look that suggested he thought she'd lost her mind. Town's 15 miles away, Miss Langley. Even if the snow stopped this minute, which it shows no sign of doing, you wouldn't make it half that distance. I can't just stay here indefinitely, she protested weakly. Why not? Adam asked simply. I've got plenty of supplies to last the winter. An extra mouth to feed won't change that. Unless you're worried about your reputation. His lips quirked slightly. Faith felt her cheeks warm. It's not proper for a woman to stay unchaperoned with a man she's not related to. I suspect that's the least of your problems right now, Adam pointed out pragmatically. But if it eases your mind, I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be as safe here as in a church. Over the next several days, as the storm continued to rage outside, Faith and Adam fell into a comfortable routine. She insisted on helping with the domestic chores, cooking and tidying while he tended to his horses in the small stable attached to the cabin and brought in firewood. Their conversations flowed easily, and Faith found herself sharing more about her life than she had intended. My mother died when I was 12, she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. After that, my father changed. He grew harder, more focused on money and status than anything else. Adam listened attentively, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. My parents died of fever when I was 16, he shared in return. I was on my own after that, worked cattle drives for years before saving enough to buy this place 2 years ago. It's a lovely piece of land, Faith observed. From what she could see through the windows when the snow occasionally abated, his property was nestled in a small valley, with pine forests on one side and open grazing land on the other. It's not much compared to the big spreads, Adam admitted, but it's mine. Got about 30 head of cattle, some chickens, and 2 good horses. It's enough for one man. Faith found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. Adam Ellis was not like any man she had met before. He was self-sufficient and competent, yet there was a gentleness to him that showed in how he treated his animals and in the careful way he spoke to her, never condescending or dismissive as her father and his friends had often been with women. On the 5th day, the storm finally broke. The sun emerged, blindingly bright against the vast white landscape. Adam donned snowshoes and ventured out to check his property, returning with the news that the main road was likely still impassable. "We're snowed in for at least another week," he informed her. "But I can ride to town once the trail clears if you'd like to arrange passage elsewhere." The thought of leaving filled Faith with an unexpected sadness. "Where would I go?" she asked quietly. "I have no relatives who would take me in against my father's wishes and no skills to earn my keep in a city." Adam sat across from her, his expression serious. "You could stay here," he offered, "not just until the snow melts, but longer if you wanted." Faith's heart skipped a beat. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave and resourceful. You cook better than I do." This brought a small smile to her lips. "And I know that for the first time in 2 years, this cabin has felt like a home instead of just a place to sleep." His honesty was disarming. "People would talk," she said, but the objection sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Let them," Adam replied with a shrug. "Unless, is there someone waiting for you somewhere, someone you care for?" "No," Faith admitted. "There's no one." Over the next 2 weeks, as December gave way to January of 1888, Faith found herself settling into life at Adam's cabin as if she had always belonged there. He taught her to shoot his rifle, insisting that every woman in the territory should know how to defend herself. She, in turn, showed him how to make proper biscuits instead of the hard, dense things he called bread. They worked side by side, clearing paths through the snow, tending to the animals, and repairing a leak in the cabin roof. In the evenings, Adam read aloud from the small collection of books he possessed, mostly practical manuals, but also a volume of Tennyson's poetry that had belonged to his mother. It was during one of these evenings, as Adam's deep voice recited Locksley Hall, that Faith realized she was falling in love with him. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had known him barely 3 weeks, yet she felt as if she had known him all her life. "You're staring," Adam observed, looking up from the book with a slight smile. "You read beautifully," Faith said, flustered at being caught. "Your mother taught you well." "She believed education was important even for a rancher's son," Adam replied, closing the book. "Though I suspect she hoped I'd become something more respectable than a small-time cattleman." "There's nothing more respectable than honest work," Faith asserted. "My father surrounds himself with bankers and businessmen who cheat widows out of their inheritance and call it smart business. I'd rather know one honest rancher than 100 such men." Adam's eyes softened as he regarded her. "You're not what I expected, Faith Langley." "What did you expect?" she asked curiously. "When I found you in that snowstorm, I thought you might be some delicate town girl who'd lost her way," he admitted. "But you're stronger than most men I've known." The compliment warmed her more than the fire. "Necessity," she said modestly. "After my mother died, I had to run the household. My father was too busy with his business dealings to concern himself with domestic matters." "His loss," Adam said firmly. "Any man would be proud to have a daughter like you." As January progressed, the snow began to recede enough that Adam could make the journey into town for supplies. Faith waited anxiously for his return, both eager for news and afraid of what it might be. What if her father had put out word about her? What if the townspeople already knew she was living unchaperoned with Adam? When he finally returned, his expression was grim. "Your father's been telling people you ran off with a man to Denver," he reported as he unloaded supplies. "He's disowned you publicly, saying you've brought shame on the family name." Faith had expected as much, but the confirmation still hurt. "At least he doesn't know where I am," she said, attempting to sound unaffected. Adam set down a bag of flour more forcefully than necessary. "That's not all," he added reluctantly. "He's apparently made a deal with Holloway anyway. They're merging their ranches through some legal arrangement instead of a marriage. Your father's using the story of your elopement to garner sympathy in business circles." "Of course he is," Faith said bitterly. "He always finds a way to turn situations to his advantage." Adam hesitated before continuing. I also heard that the Langley ranch hands have been asking questions about a young woman matching your description. Your father may have guessed you're still in the area. Fear gripped Faith's heart. If he finds me, he won't, Adam assured her firmly. And even if he did, you're not a child. He has no legal right to force you back. You don't know my father, Faith said quietly. When he wants something, he takes it, by whatever means necessary. That night, Faith lay awake long after Adam's breathing had deepened into sleep. The thought of being discovered and dragged back to her father's house filled her with dread. Worse was the thought that Adam might be hurt trying to protect her. Her father was not above hiring men to do his dirty work. By morning, she had made a decision. I should leave, she announced as they ate breakfast. Go somewhere far from here where my father can't find me. Adam set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Is that what you want? It's what makes sense, Faith insisted, avoiding his gaze. I'm putting you at risk by staying. Look at me, Adam requested softly, and when she did, the intensity in his blue eyes took her breath away. I'm not afraid of your father or his men. This is my land, and in case you haven't noticed, I'm capable of defending what's mine. The possessive edge to his words sent a shiver through Faith that had nothing to do with fear. I'm not yours to defend, she reminded him, though her heart argued otherwise. Aren't you? He challenged quietly. These past weeks I've come to care for you, Faith, more than I thought possible. If you want to leave because you don't feel the same, I'll respect that. But don't leave because you're trying to protect me. Faith's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. I care for you too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That's why I can't bear the thought of bringing trouble to your door. Adam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses, but his touch was gentle. Trouble comes whether we invite it or not, he said. At least let's face it together. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses broke the moment. Adam was on his feet instantly, moving to the window with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to danger. His expression hardened as he looked out. 3 riders, he reported, reaching for his rifle. Stay inside. Fear clutched at Faith's throat as she recognized the description of the lead rider Adam gave. It was Samuel Price, her father's foreman, a brutal man who enjoyed inflicting pain. Adam, please, they're dangerous, she pleaded. So am I when provoked, he replied grimly, checking his weapon before stepping outside to meet the approaching men. Faith moved to the window, her heart in her throat as she watched Adam stand his ground on the porch, rifle not quite aimed but clearly ready. The 3 riders stopped a respectful distance away. Morning, Ellis, Samuel called, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. Heard you might be harboring a runaway. My personal affairs aren't your concern, Price, Adam replied evenly. State your business and move on. Samuel's face twisted into an unpleasant smile. Mr. Langley wants his daughter returned, says she's unwell in the head, making up stories and running off. Is that so? Adam's voice remained calm, but Faith could see the tension in his shoulders. Seems to me a man who puts his daughter out in a blizzard is the one who's unwell. The accusation wiped the smile from Samuel's face. That's a lie. Mr. Langley's been worried sick since she disappeared. Now hand her over and there won't be any trouble. There's already trouble, Adam countered. You're trespassing on my property. One of the other riders shifted nervously, but Samuel held firm. We're not leaving without the girl. Yes, you are, Adam said with deadly certainty. One way or another. The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Faith couldn't bear it any longer. She stepped outside, ignoring Adam's sharp look of warning. I'm right here, Samuel, she called out, moving to stand beside Adam. You can tell my father I'm well and staying of my own free will. Samuel's eyes narrowed. Your father says different, miss. Says you're confused and need to come home where you belong. My father cast me out to die in the snow rather than let me refuse a marriage to a man 3 times my age, Faith stated clearly. I'd rather take my chances out here than return to that house. That's not your choice to make, Samuel growled, spurring his horse forward a few steps. Your father has legal authority over you, girl. Adam raised his rifle slightly. That's close enough, Price. Samuel halted, his eyes calculating. You willing to die for this girl, Ellis? Because there are more men coming. Mr. Langley's offering $100 to whoever brings his daughter home. Is that what you're worth to him now? Adam asked Faith quietly, never taking his eyes off the three men. $100. Probably less than what he owes Holloway, Faith replied bitterly. Adam's jaw tightened. Ride back to Langley, he told Samuel. Tell him his daughter is under my protection now. If he wants to discuss it like a civilized man, he can come himself, unarmed. Samuel spat on the ground. You think you're being noble, Ellis? You're just another man taking advantage of a young girl, no different than Holloway, except you can't pay for the privilege. The insult hit its mark. Adam's finger tightened on the trigger, but Faith placed a restraining hand on his arm. He's not worth it, she murmured. After a tense moment, Adam lowered the rifle slightly. You have 10 seconds to get off my land, he told Samuel. After that, I start shooting. Samuel's face contorted with rage, but he was no fool. With a curt nod to his companions, he wheeled his horse around. This isn't over, Ellis, he called over his shoulder as they rode away. Only when they had disappeared from sight did Adam fully lower his weapon. You shouldn't have come outside, he admonished, but there was no real anger in his voice, only concern. I couldn't let you face them alone, Faith replied simply. Adam's expression softened as he looked at her. You're the bravest woman I've ever known, Faith Langley. Impulsively, he reached out to touch her cheek. And the most beautiful. Faith leaned into his touch, her heart racing. What are we going to do? They'll be back, maybe with more men. We'll be ready, Adam assured her. I've got friends in the area who owe me favors, but first. He hesitated, seeming suddenly unsure despite having faced down 3 armed men without flinching. There's something I need to say. Faith held her breath as Adam took both her hands in his. I know it hasn't been long, he began, his voice husky with emotion, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Faith, and if you'll have me, I want to marry you. Not just to protect you from your father, but because I can't imagine my life without you now. Tears welled in Faith's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. Yes, she whispered. Oh, Adam, yes. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally parted, Adam pressed his forehead against hers. Once we're married, your father will have no legal claim on you, he said. But even if that weren't true, I'd still want you as my wife. They were married 3 days later by the circuit preacher who happened to be passing through the nearby town. It was a simple ceremony with only a few witnesses, Adam's neighbors, who had readily agreed to stand with them against any trouble that might come from the Langley ranch. That evening, as they returned to the cabin, their home, Adam carried Faith over the threshold just as he had on that snowy night when he'd first rescued her. This is home now, he said softly, repeating the words he'd spoken then, but with new meaning. For both of us, forever. Faith's father did try once more to reclaim her, arriving at the cabin with Samuel and several hired guns 2 weeks after the wedding. But he found not just Adam waiting, but half a dozen neighboring ranchers as well, all standing firm beside the newlyweds. She's my wife now, Mr. Langley, Adam stated calmly. Legally married before witnesses. Whatever claim you think you had on her is gone. Thaddeus Langley's face had turned an alarming shade of red as he glared at his daughter. You'll regret this, he seethed. When this? Cowboy can't provide for you the way you're accustomed to living. Faith met his gaze steadily. I've never been happier than I am now, she responded. And I've never been more disappointed in you, Father. Mother would be ashamed of what you've become. The mention of her mother struck home. For a moment, Faith thought she saw a flicker of the man her father had once been before greed and bitterness had consumed him. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold fury. You're dead to me, he declared, turning his horse sharply. Don't come crawling back when times get hard. As Faith watched him ride away, she felt Adam's strong arm encircle her waist. Are you all right? He asked softly. She nodded, leaning into his embrace. I'm exactly where I belong. Spring came early that year, transforming the snow-covered landscape into a riot of wildflowers and new grass. Faith and Adam worked side by side to expand their small ranch, adding more cattle and planting a vegetable garden beside the cabin. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch Adam had built, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Any regrets? Adam asked her one such evening in late April, his arm around her shoulders as they enjoyed the mild air. Faith looked up at him, at the face that had become as familiar to her as her own reflection and infinitely more dear. "Only that we didn't meet sooner," she replied honestly. Adam smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." "The rest of our lives," Faith echoed, placing her hand over her still flat stomach. "And perhaps a new life to share it with." Adam went still beside her, then turned to look into her eyes. "Faith, are you saying?" Her smile was answer enough. With a whoop of joy that startled the chickens in the nearby coop, Adam lifted her into his arms and spun her around. "When?" he asked when he finally set her down, his hands gentle on her waist. "The doctor in town says October," Faith replied, laughing at his exuberance. "October," Adam repeated, awe in his voice as he placed his hand over hers on her abdomen. "Our child will be born in the most beautiful season when the aspens turn gold." As summer turned to fall, and Faith's body changed with the growing life inside her, news reached them that Thaddeus Langley had suffered financial ruin. The merger with Holloway's ranch had failed spectacularly when cattle prices plummeted, and Holloway had managed to structure the deal so that Langley bore the brunt of the losses. "He's lost everything," Faith told Adam after a neighbor brought the news. "The ranch, the house, even his good name in the business community." Adam studied her face carefully. "How do you feel about that?" Faith considered the question seriously. "Sad," she admitted finally. "Not for the man he became, but for the father I once knew. He lost his way long before he lost his fortune." On a crisp October morning, with the aspens indeed shimmering gold against an azure sky, Faith gave birth to a daughter they named Margaret, after Adam's mother. As she watched her husband cradle their newborn with hands that could break a wild horse, but now touched their child with infinite tenderness, Faith's heart overflowed with gratitude. A week later, an unexpected visitor arrived at their door. Thaddeus Langley stood on their porch, hat in hand, looking older and far less imposing than Faith remembered. The arrogance was gone from his bearing, replaced by a weary dignity. "I've come to see my granddaughter," he said simply when Adam answered the door, his stance protective but not hostile. Faith appeared behind her husband, the baby in her arms. "How did you know?" she asked, surprised. "News travels," her father replied. "May I come in?" After a silent exchange with Faith, Adam stepped aside, allowing the older man to enter. Thaddeus approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the tiny bundle Faith held. "She's beautiful," he said softly when Faith reluctantly allowed him to see the child. "She has your mother's eyes. Her name is Margaret," Faith told him, watching emotions play across her father's face. Thaddeus nodded, then straightened his shoulders with visible effort. "I've come to apologize," he said formally. "What I did was unforgivable. I let greed cloud my judgment and nearly cost you your life." The apology, so unexpected, rendered Faith momentarily speechless. Adam moved to stand beside her, his presence a steady comfort. "I don't expect forgiveness," Thaddeus continued when neither of them spoke, "but I wanted you to know that I regret my actions, and—" he hesitated, pride warring with humility. "I've taken a job at the sawmill in town. It's honest work, if not what I'm used to." "You're welcome to visit your granddaughter," Faith said finally. "Not for my sake, but for hers. Every child deserves to know her family." It was a small beginning, a fragile bridge across a chasm of hurt and betrayal. But as the years passed, it proved strong enough to bear the weight of cautious reconciliation. Thaddeus Langley never fully regained his former prosperity, but he found something more valuable in the simple joy of watching his granddaughter grow. Faith and Adam's ranch prospered modestly. never becoming the largest in the territory, but providing well for their growing family. Margaret was joined by 2 brothers over the next 5 years, and the cabin expanded accordingly, with Adam adding rooms as their needs changed. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their much-improved home watching their children play in the yard, Adam took Faith's hand and brought it to his lips. "Remember that night I found you in the snow?" He asked, his blue eyes as vivid and kind as they had been on that fateful evening. "How could I forget?" Faith replied with a smile. "You carried me in from the cold and told me this is home now." Adam's expression grew tender. "I had no idea then what those words would come to mean," he said. "This home, our children, this life we've built together, it's more than I ever dared hope for." Faith leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment washing over her like the golden light of the setting sun. "From the darkest night came the brightest dawn," she murmured, quoting from one of Adam's cherished books of poetry. Their life together had not been without challenges, harsh winters, dry summers that threatened the crops, the ordinary struggles of ranching in an unforgiving territory. But through it all, their love had only deepened, a wellspring of strength that sustained them through every hardship. As twilight settled over the mountains and their children's laughter echoed across the yard, Faith looked at the man beside her, her rescuer, her husband, her partner in all things, and knew with perfect certainty that being cast out into the snow had been not an ending but a beginning. The beginning of a journey that had led her home, not to a place but to the arms of the man she loved. This was home now and forever would be.